Seth, do we want to drop family lore?
We want to drop all the lore. We are descended from Munchkins.
Not technically, but
not really. But
okay.
I gotta put that in there.
Yeah. So, Zach.
Yes.
Our grandfather's cousins, maternal grandfather's cousins, somehow became severely inbred to the point where they were little people.
Zach's face reaction to those.
When casting came around for casting extras for Munchkinland in The Wizard of Oz, somehow our cousins managed to get roles as extras as Munchkins in Munchkinland.
In the original Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is real. This is 100% real.
Yeah, they're extras in Munchkinland.
They're cousins, not actually great-great-great-grandparents. But
yeah, we're not directly descended from them, but there's a link.
Hello there.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Talk to me, Goose.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Quiet, son. Sarah.
Squirrel! I could do this all day.
Are you watching closely?
Have you seen Wicked?
I did.
Okay.
I saw it with a bunch of girls.
Nice.
No, I mean, the group you travel with to the theater doesn't really determine all that much when you're sitting next to two people and one of them's your sister and one of them's your wife. So
Yeah.
it's pretty good. You could tell that there were fans that got the few references that there were. And maybe that was because I was sitting next to Annika. But this is more or less going to be a movie review and maybe talking to Annika about the comparison. But she also says she hasn't seen the musical version. So
She hasn't. Okay.
no. We could talk about the poster controversy too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we could talk about, kind of the question at the beginning of the movie about wickedness.
Do you have it written down? I don't remember it.
Well, it's just kind of like, are you born with it, or is it something that happens to you? Something along those lines. I forgot the exact question was. But
I'm sure somebody wrote it down somewhere. 15 iconic Wicked quotes. Are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them?
that's the question, Endless.
It's $1 million question.
We could also talk about moral relativism.
Ah, yes. I believe that I actually put down that topic as a whole episode, just because there's a lot of things these days that are blurring that line or moving the line. Relativism. I can spell.
I mean, that's a word that I need to think to pronounce correctly. So.
Do you know how many words I would just be screwed with if I didn't have autocorrect? I think every I before E except after C I've gotten wrong. No matter which way it is, whether it's I then E or E then I still mess it up. Until it's written. Like when it's written, then I see that it's wrong. But gosh, autocorrect is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
What happened this week in the news, in movie news?
I don't even know. I feel like it's been a quiet week.
Yeah. I think one thing that I saw, George from Pitch Meeting did a video last week on a very cheesy Hallmark movie that has been making the rounds and been very popular. And everyone was like, I'm so glad that he decided to cover this instead of Wicked and Gladiator, two of the biggest movies of the year.
Was Hot Frosty the one he did? Or was
Yeah.
that do you know the concept or the...
Well, after I watched his video,
Okay.
It's a classic Hallmark, but really cheesy and with a lot of weird...
It's a Netflix movie, actually. But
I did see that there were a couple actors I recognize in it.
just the whole thing about it being like Frosty the Snowman, except he's a hot and attractive man is just a weird concept.
Yeah.
A love story with the snowman is what it is. So
Yeah.
makes me uncomfortable.
And he points all that out in the video. It's like, so are you arguing that he's a man or a child? I don't get it.
He's got chiseled abs, that's for sure.
Well, and he pointed out, like, so if they want to get down together, did that mean that they carved that into the snowman, or did the scarf bring that about?
Wait a minute.
I don't like where this is going. I'm looking at Kristen Chenoweth's career because I don't know if she's more of a theater person or a TV person.
She was in a show called Pushing Daisies. I know that much.
Okay.
Really interesting show.
Mm-hmm.
They gave her like random musical numbers every so often.
Interesting. She was in Rio 2. She's in a lot of Tinkerbell stuff. And she has a movie coming, or a Netflix rom-com with Lindsay Lohan coming out, or has come out. It says scheduled for release in November 2024, and nobody came to update it on Wikipedia. I love those memes. It's like rushing to Wikipedia, or that one guy who's rushing to Wikipedia to change everything to past tense when the guy dies, or whatever. Annika, we need you. We don't know what we're doing without you. So something we'll probably talk about is that Jonathan Bailey showed up on screen, and I was like, now that's a Prince Charming type of guy. But then I immediately criticized him for, like, all of the guys were falling for him as well at Shiz.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I can see it. But then Annika informed me that he is gay. And so that makes sense for the movie, but also he has been described by the media as a sex symbol whose fans, according to the LA Times, span all genders and orientations. That's gross.
Now I see people saying he should play Batman, so...
He should play Batman.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there are better options. I'm just saying.
They were just kind of arguing that, you know, he has, like, that charismatic side you need for Bruce Wayne. Then you also kind of see him be a bit more dark and lonely.
Yeah.
So it's kind of there, but I think there's better actors, so...
I think even commenting on my own comment is that he just has a Riz face. Like when he walked into the to the college, he's just like,
yeah,
looking at everyone.
Rizzler.
Please, no. Indina Menzel on screen and stage. Frozen, 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 Frozen. Ralph Breaks the Internet. Frozen 2. Frozen 3. Technically, I guess she was in Disenchanted. And Enchanted. Yeah. She was in the Enchanted movies, I suppose. But besides that, it's been a lot of Elsa.
I think both of them are more Broadway actors.
Yeah. Or one of those people who are Broadway actors and TV show actors. So like, kind of like Grant Gustin.
Yeah.
Idina Menzel was in Glee. That stuff. Where there's kind of a crossover somehow between TV shows and theater for some reason. There she is.
Hey, sorry.
Oh, good.
Like, this is not a very interesting backdrop.
What's that?
Not a very interesting backdrop, and I'm sitting on my floor.
You're fine. You're fine.
This is gonna be terrible.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what we would do without you. I was thinking about, like, oh, what if she says that something came up and Zach and I would have to YOLO an episode of a movie that we just saw and have no real backstory to. But
As someone with a degree in theater.
I don't know that you knew because you probably don't listen as much, but
I have a degree in theater.
No, you do. But we brought that up in the Newsies episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you had just told me about she's bringing over a big chair.
I feel like I gotta be more official.
You need to have a cat.
You just need like a fireplace in the background now.
Yeah.
Anyways, in the Newsies episode, I actually brought up, because you had texted me that day about the reprise.
Oh, yeah.
And Roman didn't believe you that it's a reprise and not a reprise. And I said, hey, if you believe that I have a degree in animation, then you have to believe that my sister has a degree in theater, and therefore she has credibility.
I know these things. Hopefully my room isn't too messy.
As you got a pirate hat on the wall is basically
Yeah, all we
all
can
I
see
can
is the
see.
pirate hat. So.
Yeah. Maybe that's what people get angry at me for this time.
What's this lady with a pirate hat on her wall talking about?
Why does she have a pirate hat on her wall?
I love that the Aragorn reel is just like, what's this lady under a bunk bed talking about? I'm like,
Why is she wearing a blanket?
I gotta stay on theme.
There you go.
Nice.
And you crocheted that?
Can you tell what it is? Maybe like that.
Looks great.
Okay, there we go. That's perfect.
Okay. One of the most unrealistic things about the whole movie was that Glinda had a black clothing item amongst all her pink. I think that's so fake compared to all the flying monkeys and magic and such.
I mean, she did say it was her grandma's, but yeah.
Oh, that's true. Okay, so Zach saw Wicked today.
Yes.
What was your history with Wicked? Did you know, like, I would assume most people have seen Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I've seen Wizard of Oz.
But that's probably it. I knew some of the songs and knew the basic story, but I hadn't seen the show.
I knew 3 songs, and that was about it.
Which 3?
Defying Gravity, Popular, and For Good, were I think the only 3 songs I knew.
Wait, what was the third one?
For Good,
For Good. Okay, gotcha.
which wasn't in this one, but
I knew For Good from when we sang it in high school choir, Annika.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I did a little bit of a dive into Wicked, probably because of you, but then, didn't go any... Like, I knew that there were crossovers between the story of Wizard of Oz, as in part 2. We don't want to spoil it too much, but the story weaves in and out of the original Wizard of Oz story where they...
Yeah, it's like, it's basically like the B side of everything that's happening with Dorothy. It's like, basically fills in the negative space. Whenever Dorothy's off doing something, it's like, okay, but this is what Glinda and Elphaba were doing while she was doing that.
Well, and I don't want to give away part 2 spoilers for those people who don't know what goes on. There's a lot of character twists, I am led to believe, in part 2.
Well, and the other thing is that with them stretching it out, it'll be interesting to see. There's also rumors that there will be new songs, which I think is very intriguing. I'm interested to see how that's going to go, especially with the fans who have the songs that are in the musical and like hold them so dearly and so closely. Like, to have new stuff, it'll be interesting to see how that goes over.
were there any new songs in the first part?
No, not
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, I will say up front, even as someone with a degree in theater, I have never seen the Broadway musical like live, or I think even in its entirety. And I'm a fan, but I'm not like a super fan, so I don't know everything.
Gotcha.
But
Does Act 1 typically end with Defying Gravity?
yes, that is honestly a very, very like iconic thing. Is that basically she does the big riff at the end, and then it basically is like goes to black.
Oh.
So I was even surprised that in the movie they added like that bit of a tag where she's flying, and then Glinda's like getting taken in by Madame Horrible. I was honestly surprised that they didn't just do the iconic end riff and then just Wicked Part 1.
Yeah, I was expecting that too.
I think that way of rephrasing, not even rephrasing, because it's still ending with that scene, that song, but the timing of it, even though I kind of criticized it as we were walking out for like being super slow and multiple measures between each line, it actually worked for transposing the climax of the middle of the movie into the climax of the end of the movie. Obviously, it's part 1 of 2, and they let you know that. Not necessarily in the marketing, but in the opening shot, which I also thought that logo looked very cool, being like it was from the 30s. But I think they teased the next movie the same way, and maybe not the same way that Fast and Furious teased the 11th movie, where they're like, pretty much stay tuned to, or tune in next time for the next installment. I think it was a satisfying ending, and it is just basically a drawn out version of the show, in the sense that now we have a year intermission or however long, and you still get that satisfying conclusion of what you've been shown, while not being unsatisfied, I suppose.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the ends of the Lord of the Rings movies because they did also have that same task of like trying to tell a self-contained, well-resolved story while also not tying up all the loose ends, obviously, because you still have a lot of stuff to go and get through. So I think it reminded me of that in a way of how they do follow a good story chart, basically, where you have the rising action, the climax, and then the denouement. And then they kind of added the denouement in there.
The what now?
Denouement. The falling action. It's something we talk about a lot in directing because basically as soon as the conflict is resolved, you need to wrap it up because the audience is they're checked out. Especially when you're talking about like children's plays or shows or stories, that denouement's got to be snappy. I don't know how to spell denouement if you're going to ask.
I'm trying.
I saw your face trying to spell it.
It's
I'm
French,
trying here.
so if that helps, at least I'm pretty sure it's French. It's like M-A-U, the end is like M-A-U-X. It's like denouement.
I'm just getting a bunch of screenshots of slides from people's presentations.
Oh, well, but like, I think that as much as it surprised me that they didn't end right after, like, the very end of Defying Gravity.
I'm sorry. The direct translation for falling action into French is action de chute.
Denouement. Do you see it?
Okay, are you using Google Translate for that?
Well, I looked up falling action French, and it's just says action de chute. It just means the action goes down the chute.
I mean, that's basically, if you look at a chart of story structure, that's what it is you have, I'm going to try and do this like mirror image. You have inciting incident, you have your rising action, then you shoots up to the climax, and then this is the denouement, and then you have your conclusion down here.
I found the spelling of it. It's one word. D-E with an accent, de. D-E-N-O-U-E-M-E-N-T. I think. Denouement.
Yeah. Anyway, all that to say, I think with that little added like half a scene with those things, I think it helped to provide a satisfying denouement from the climax of the end of Defying Gravity. It added that bit of denouement that gives you that little bit of resolution while still knowing that there's all this stuff that happens in the second movie, whereas you don't need to do that in the Broadway show because you're going to go out for 15 minutes and buy some drinks and then come right back. It's like this had to get people invested enough to come back in 12 months.
Annika, it's interesting that you brought up the Lord of the Rings because I heard somebody compare it. Again, there hasn't been a lot of criticism. This is probably top 3 of movies of the year. Pretty close. It's really good. But one criticism that somebody had is that it is in some sense similar to The Hobbit, where it was, at least the length of the movie was drawn on to be a full-length movie, because only adapting Act 1 probably would have given you an hour and a half, because then you have a mirror act with of the same length. You have a 3-hour show, which is probably pretty usual for a theater play. But they had to draw it out. I don't know what they added, or if they just...
That was my question.
Made some of the scenes longer just with slower interactions, and everything in live action movies are toned down versus on stage is bigger than life. So yeah, the comparison between putting unnecessary stuff in like they did with The Hobbit, I don't know. I think better the story better, but did you feel that at all, or did you think it was well paced even for the length of movie, which was getting pretty long at some points?
Yeah, I mean, I also saw some of the criticism being centered around that it was a very slow-paced movie, which I didn't necessarily feel personally. I mean, I definitely saw those moments where I felt like they were expanding the story, but to me, I thought the pacing of the movie overall was pretty good. Yeah, I definitely was concerned when the length of the movie was announced because it's about the same length as the entirety of Wicked, like as the original musical. And so yeah, that thought did cross my mind. But a lot of it they really just it was more just expanded as opposed to like really much added. I do know that they did add some stuff that was more pulled from the Wizard of Oz movie, as opposed to the musical, which is a little bit more of a self-contained thing. Um, so with like the poppies that put everyone to sleep in Dr. Dillamon's
Oh,
class, that
okay.
is not as much of a thing in the musical, which is, kind of a way they're like, oh, the poppies. Everyone knows the poppies from the musical or from the movie. Sorry. We're going to pull those in and get that. So I think it did a good job in sort of roping in people who are maybe fans of just The Wizard of Oz, because then there's those elements in there that they maybe recognize a little more easily than references to the musical. But yeah, I think overall a lot of it was just kind of like added bits of dialogue, little expansions of scenes, and things like that, as opposed to stuff in the musical where you just are moving from one thing to the other because you do have that limited time and attention span for people sitting down in a theater.
As opposed to The Hobbit, where it was like, here's an entire tangent of a story that you can follow for an extra half hour. Or
Here's
whatever.
Gandalf's side quest.
And a new character and this and that. And yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot
Very
more of it
different.
was just more added to what was already there. And I would be interested to know if maybe some of what was added to the movie is stuff that had originally been cut from the musical to make the musical
Yeah.
shorter. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, but I don't think we know that sort of information yet from behind the scenes information. That's just something I'm curious about.
Yeah, I think that's something we've talked about with the remakes of remakes. Not saying the Wicked show was a remake, but like when you have a second go at it, maybe you can fix some of the stuff that either hasn't aged well or you didn't like from the first time around, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So that would be interesting. I feel like there's behind the scenes stuff that will come out, probably like a director's commentary on the DVD, whatever. That would be very interesting.
DVD, you're so old fashioned, Seth.
Hey, physical media is superior.
Yep.
Really quick, I wanted to get into moral relativism in a second and the whole concept of why Wicked exists, but the poster controversy, as our British friends would say, the controversy about the fan poster. I think everyone, I'd find it hard to find a fan who would side with the actress of Elphaba in the whole poster thing, mostly because the fan who made it never meant any ill will towards her, and was just reflecting the original style in the new style. And so I don't know that I don't know that we need to say much, but it was the one thing that was a little thorn in the side of the marketing is just this whole thing of her getting very offended at a very innocent fan art. So I don't know what your perspective on that was.
I don't know. It seems like actors and actresses usually like encourage fan art and like to see that type of thing. So to see it get so brutally attacked by the actress just for covering her eyes and changing the color of her lips just seemed crazy to me. And I don't know. She said something along the lines of like the artist was erasing her or something like that. And I just feel like Cynthia Erivo, or however you pronounce her name, just really
I think that was right.
blew the whole thing out of proportions. So
maybe she was having a bad day, but yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that anyone really took her side on that, but also I don't think anyone else was offended at her offense, and people still saw the movie. I don't think this is a situation with like Rachel Ziegler and Snow White where everyone's like, you're really not selling this movie for us. She was proud of what she made, and that's understandable. So
Yeah, I mean it was interesting because when I first saw like the actual promo image, the original promo image, my first thought was kind of like, oh, like it's a cool poster, but it doesn't look like the iconic Broadway playbill that everyone knows. And so when the fan edit came out, I was like, oh, that's also kind of cool. And then I saw what Cynthia posted and was like, oh, that's interesting. From my best guess would be is that her and Ariana have been on this press tour for so long that the two of them are probably just exhausted.
Yeah.
There's also been some stuff that I don't know if it's something I really want to include in this conversation, but about the physical health of those two actresses.
Oh,
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And so I think there's definitely an aspect of they're probably incredibly burnt out from the press tour. You know, these two actresses are essentially constantly under scrutiny because nobody knows what the movie is going to be like. Even Cynthia's casting was questioned, from the very get-go, one because she's not very well known, one because she is Black, like all of those things. And I feel like it was maybe one of those things that just kind of like made her snap. And not having a publicist or someone to maybe like filter things through before making that kind of a post, I think just kind of made it blow up way, way bigger than it needed to be. So yeah, I think she also kind of walked it back a little bit on an interview later, which I think was, they probably sat her down with a publicist and said, "Hey, you can't, like, kind of like you can't do that. That's not going to help sell the movie." But yeah, it definitely is. I think it's one of those things that, and like the Ariana Grande, Ethan Slater drama, I think it's going to be one of those things that just kind of goes down with the lore of the making of this movie. Seth, did you not know about that?
No, I was about to say, the Ariana Grande, Ethan Slater drama. Yeah, that.
Wait, Zach, did you know about this?
Yeah, Ethan Slater left his wife and family to be with Ariana Grande.
The guy who plays Bach, the Munchkins.
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of how the story goes? Isn't that kind of ironic?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yes and no, but yeah. Okay. Wow, that's crazy that you didn't know that.
I mean,
they both left their partners essentially, and Ethan Slater had basically a newborn child with his wife, and she left her husband, and yeah.
Oof.
Now they're together.
Interesting.
Ethan Slater's also famous for playing SpongeBob on Broadway.
SpongeBob.
So that's funny.
Yeah. I giggled such a giggle when he sang to Nessa Rose, and you could hear the SpongeBob nah, in his vibrato.
Oh, okay, I could hear.
Oh no. The giggle I gugged was quite crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I don't know that I want to go down this rabbit hole.
Oh, you should. It's fascinating.
I did find an article on Teen Vogue called Ethan Slater and Ariana Grande Relationship Timeline. Yeah. Anyways.
Moving on.
Moving on. Actually, no, not moving on. I was going to talk about individual actors and how they did. One of them, I think Cynthia did a great job. She had the sass. She had the poise and firmness that it seems that Elphaba has universally. I think Ariana Grande really fit into the role of Glinda, being cute and likable, not necessarily because Ariana Grande is cute and likable universally, but she knows how to play that character.
Yeah.
And I this is my personal opinion that I think the character of Ariana Grande is something she puts on, because I said I think both of you the reel of her accidentally forgetting to do her voice and she switched back into it in an interview.
Only thing I thought. That's how I felt. I was like, what has happened? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I've been writing a lot, and maybe there's some more, but I would like to do a deluxe at some point.
And so I think she still plays a role somewhat in her professional career, which is her choice, but I also think that fit Glinda well. And I had listened to a lot of the songs beforehand, and especially Popular was, I think, nailed in my opinion, I think
Yeah.
that she did a really good job with that. And that's one where I was like, that sounds almost like the Broadway one that I listened to. So I think she did well with that, and obviously knew how to dance, knew how to sing. I think Annika, you said to me after we got out that everyone knew how to sing except for Jeff Goldblum, but we'll get to him in a second. But everyone did well with the singing roles, and that's often not always the case in these movie musicals.
So, I actually was really surprised when I listened to your Les Mis episode that people don't like the soundtrack. So
Of the movie.
Of the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the general theater kid consensus of the Wicked soundtrack?
It's definitely been very interesting to see how it's gone down, because like from I knew Cynthia initially from Harriet, and she sings a little bit in that movie, and she's fantastic. She has an incredible background on Broadway and on the West End. She was in the revival of a musical called The Color Purple, where she sings one of the most like notoriously difficult female songs. And so I had full faith in her. I knew she was going to be fantastic, and she was fantastic. I think that especially when she's Elphaba at the beginning of the movie, when she's a little bit younger and more subdued, I was a little nervous that it would kind of be that uncanny valley where you can tell that an actor is supposed to be playing someone who is much, much younger than them. The only person I really got that from was Jonathan Bailey, and we can talk about him again later. But I thought she was fantastic. She brings the realism, the grit. I think her voice has such like a lovely tone to it. That is just so beautiful. I think for Ariana as well, I was much more skeptical of her casting in the movie. I was very, very nervous that it would kind of be a situation of what we're more used to when it comes to movie musicals, where someone who can't necessarily sing gets put in a musical and then is auto-tuned out of existence. And like, we know Ariana can sing, like she has an incredible voice, but it was like the acting and the characterization that I was definitely much more nervous about. But I think Seth said it, is that her as a person really suited the character. And then I do think she really did a really, really good job at like letting herself get lost in the character. So it wasn't like Ariana Grande as Glinda. It was just Glinda. I was incredibly impressed by her. I thought she did a really, really great job in the role. But yeah, as far as like the soundtrack, I think that overall people in like the musical theater fan community have really loved the soundtrack. And it's kind of like we've been listening to Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel for 21 years. And while they're fantastic, they're amazing, we love them, it's so cool to have an official different interpretation to like listen to. So I think overall it's been a very good sense of like, wow, this is something new and cool that we get to celebrate. And we don't necessarily have to stop listening to the original version, because that is iconic and it is incredible in its own way. But now we have this other option, basically. And you can pick which one you want to listen to now, as opposed to like only having the one.
Well, and I looked up on Spotify just now, Les Mis, and how there's 4 or 5 different options. And that's a thing that we talked about in that episode of like, which one's the best? But now you kind of see it as a win to get another one, not to be like, oh, I'm finally fed up with the theater version, but a little bit of a twist, a little bit of a different sound, little mix up of the instrumental, and a refresh. And especially because it just got Wicked, and Wicked was the theater play was all you had. Getting another chance, and I think that's probably why they made the movie, is to see it in a different format, to experience it, and maybe probably make it more accessible. Yeah,
the other thing that I think is funny is the memes I've been seeing of like the fact that Cynthia Erivo No Good Deed is just an MP3 sitting on someone's laptop, because that's one of the Act 2 songs that people are so excited to hear, or like For Good, Ariana and Cynthia is just sitting somewhere on a computer. Like the fact that we just have to wait a year to hear those iconic songs sung by 2 iconic queens is like, Oh, it's so
I mean-
infuriating.
That shows the reception to it is that
Yeah.
you're anticipating it. They did a good job making you want part 2, and that's really going to drive ticket sales next time. And speaking of driving ticket sales, they have been promoting this movie to oblivion. There is so much.
The mac and cheese.
There's mac and cheese.
There was pink and green mac and cheese by Walmart.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's becoming annoying, only for the sense of it's been going on for so long. And usually with things like Red One, we kept seeing the Red One trailer. The Rock was promoting it, saying it's the best thing since Oppenheimer. And Ellie and I were like, I'm so excited for Red One to come out, if only to stop seeing the trailers. And I was kind of hoping for that with Wicked. At least they're mixing it up, as in they're not just playing the same trailer over and over again, but they're still going with a lot of commercials and such. But as I'm scrolling through the Wicked Wikipedia page, there's a whole section called Stage to Screen Changes, which would be interesting to read through. It's pretty decent. And then there's a whole section on poster criticism. Oh, the Mattel dolls.
Oh.
I think everyone knows about that one.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe we should skip that one.
Let's skip that one. But yeah, the makes me want to be extra careful when doing marketing for stuff.
Yeah. I just wonder who got fired.
I don't think they got fired. I think it's an honest mistake.
You don't think so?
I don't think that's an honest mistake. I mean, like, maybe it was a mistake, but someone should have caught that. Someone should have said, wait, isn't the website wicked.movies.com or something like that? And it's like,
It's
someone.
wickedmovie.com for
Someone.
everyone to be clear. We're going to move on. Wicked Part 2 is scheduled for November 21st, 2025, which makes sense. I don't think they would release it in. I mean, technically that's less than a year, barely.
And did they film them back to back? Do we know, or?
I would assume
I believe so. I think filming's all done.
Okay.
that would make sense.
Yeah, it's not like they're going back to film more. Unless they have pickups or something like that.
One more cast member I had to talk about is Jeff Goldblum. He is. We walked out of the theater, and I said, "Can he not play himself?" That's another kind of where I was saying about Ariana Grande, is that she kind of has her character that she plays. The thing is, I don't think Jeff Goldblum plays anything. I think that's how he is. The thing is that he's not told to do anything else for the characters that he's playing. And so it just feels like everything that he's in is just featuring Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
And I don't remember him singing all that much, and I didn't cringe or anything hearing it, but I know he's not the best singer. He's quirky, and I think that's the reason why they brought him into the Wizard of Oz role.
Okay, that his part in oh my gosh, the prologue song, that slaps though.
It's true. The thing is, how much do we say about this to not spoil anything for part 2?
That's true. We probably-
Because I think I whispered to you, maybe you didn't hear me in the theater. If you know the twist, it's pretty obvious. If you don't, I wouldn't know because I knew the twist.
Wait,
Yeah.
I
Part
think
2.
I know what I don't want to spoil anything, but I think
So we're just going to talk in code to each other for the rest of the episode.
I don't know anything about 2, but I think I predicted what you're talking about.
Okay, that would be interesting if you
I mean, we can always cut this from the episode.
Yeah, we can
Right.
cut this part out.
no, let's not. Let's just say that if you really, really don't want part 2 spoiled, skip like 5 minutes ahead. I think.
Which,
that was-
like, okay, the movie the musical has been out for as long as I've been alive. If you wanted to avoid the spoilers, you're gonna have to do a better job.
No, okay. Before that goes, this is actually something that people are not familiar with the Wicked story, and so I don't think that a ton of people know, unless you're a theater nerd like Annika and partially me, and
I'll
even
leave.
no, I didn't say that was a bad thing. Or like my father and mother-in-law aren't like theater. Well, no, they're pretty theaters. They go to the theater a lot. Like they enjoy seeing shows, so they know it. And I don't think anyone beyond that group of people really knows. So Zach, having not known anything about it, what do you think about the movie now that we've basically alluded to it for a couple minutes?
Is Oz Elphaba's real father. Is that the twist? Okay, that's the twist. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty obvious to me just from this movie. So
yeah, the whole putting his head behind his hat and the voice. I think they pitched his voice down to kind of make him sound younger.
But he still sounds like freaking Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. And then that also explains his reaction when he sees her in person. Again, he's Jeff Goldblum. He's gonna Jeff Goldblum all over the place. and he did. And he was kind of goofy like that.
There's kind of, I think a piece of this that is just funny, is that the song that he sings called A Sentimental Man, A Sentimental Man, it's kind of one of those songs that's clowned on for being the one you always skip. Nobody listens to A Sentimental Man. From the original version, from, like, you just don't. It's one of those, it comes on and you're like, you know what, Defying Gravity is next. I'm just going to go right there. I don't need to listen to this. I'm just going to skip right to the good stuff. And it's like this certain brand of song that's in every single musical. It's like the dad character or the uncle character or the grandpa character that basically just sings softly about himself for a little bit. And then we just move on. And it doesn't change anything. So I just think that that's funny that Jeff Goldblum is in this sort of a character that everyone like sort of collectively agrees. Like, we can just skip the song. No one, you know.
Interesting.
Like, it's okay. We're just going to move on. Like,
yeah.
I heard someone describe Jeff Goldblum recently. I saw it on Instagram somewhere as the weird guy with unspeakable riz. And that's so accurate for him.
But it's not like a handsome riz. It's like a charming, goofy. Yeah. He can kind of make you laugh no matter what, even if you're like, oh, this guy.
But he's a really weird guy.
Yeah. Unless you had other thing, you guys have other things about other actors? I guess Annika wanted to talk about Jonathan Bailey. So
I love Jonathan Bailey. He's amazing. He did a great job.
Too bad he's gay.
Yeah, he's for the boys.
No, I said we don't want him. As a friend, maybe.
No, I think Jonathan Bailey, obviously most people know him from Bridgerton, but he also has a pretty robust theater and acting background. So his was one of the casting choices I was also a little more excited for, because I was like, okay, this is where we get that like perfect balance between just casting someone for their name recognition without having talent, you know, like so often happens. But with Jonathan Bailey, you get like real actual talent and stage presence, but also that name recognition of people be like, oh my gosh, that's the guy from Bridgerton. So I thought that was a really, really smart casting choice. The only thing for him is that there were times, like especially at Shiz, where I think they did a good job at casting other people who looked like actual college students, where I was like, okay, and you can tell that he's 30 years old and he's trying to play a college student. But yeah, his Dancing Through Life was incredible. I think he's very charismatic. And him and Bach get a lot more development in the next part. So I'm excited to see what they do with those two characters, especially with an expanded story.
Yeah. He actually played Gavroche in Les Mis in Palace Theatre London when he was a kid. Interesting. There's also an American Psycho theater show, which is also interesting.
Yeah, musical. American Psycho musical. It's pretty crazy.
Didn't know that was a thing.
I watched a bootleg of it.
Oh.
He's also in Final Fantasy games. And moving on. This quote that kind of kicks off the movie, I think, because Glinda says it right at the beginning when she arrives in the town.
Oz. Or not Oz. The
Munchkin Land.
Munchkin Land.
Seth, do we want to drop family lore?
We want to drop all the lore. We are descended from Munchkins.
Not technically, but
not really. But
okay.
I gotta put that in there.
Yeah. So Zach.
Yes.
Our grandfather's cousins, maternal grandfather's cousins, somehow became severely inbred to the point where they were little people.
Zach's face reaction to those.
When casting came around for casting extras for Munchkin Land in The Wizard of Oz, somehow our cousins managed to get roles as extras as Munchkins in Munchkinland.
In the original Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
Yeah, mhm.
This is real. This is 100% real.
Yeah, they're extras in Munchkinland.
They're cousins, not actually great grandparents. But
Yeah, we're not directly descended from them, but there's a link.
we have Annika. Did you ever realize that we have popular distant cousins on both sides? So we have the Mossberg who made the gun, and we have Munchkins.
Munchkins.
Our claim to fame. Oh, also
Yeah.
we descended from King Ragnar of Sweden, but that's a different story.
Anyway, so that's some crazy family lore
Yeah.
for y'all listeners of the pod.
You caught me off guard when you said severely inbred.
No, your face said as much.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's objectively what happens. Anyways,
Yeah.
the whole premise of Wicked is stated in Glinda's line: "Are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them?" And usually, that's usually said as greatness. Are people born great, or do they have greatness thrust upon them? I think that's usually what it is.
Yeah.
And so that leads into a whole talk of moral relativism. And Annika, former family that we used to babysit, so take out a family that we used to babysit, has like 10-year-olds as the youngest, and their mom texted us and asked, like, what do you guys think of Wicked? I've been getting mixed reviews about it. Would this be okay to bring my 10-year-old to? And personal choice on her part, but we suggested things here and there. But one of the things that we said is, like, the whole point of Wicked is that it's taking the Wizard of Oz, which is technically good and bad. You have a good witch and you have a bad witch. If you just watch the Wizard of Oz movie, that's what it is. That's what it was written as. Part of me says keep that as is, and why does Wicked even exist when you have the good and bad? But there's room for creativity. And so the whole part of Wicked changes the Wizard of Oz into the Wicked Witch of the West isn't really wicked. She's misunderstood. Yeah. She has things happen that she reacts to, and it's interesting to have that develop into a whole story, into a whole theater, and then now into a movie. And we've been talking and noticing, the more we've been reflecting on the movies that came out this year, is that there's a lot of things that are becoming gray, especially something that I could put a name to is The Acolyte, where it basically said that the witches, the dark part of the Force that's not really the Force, it's the thread, but it's really the dark side of the Force is just as good as the Jedi. And in fact, the Jedi are bad. They kidnap children, they indoctrinate them, and that really tarnishes what George Lucas made in literally one of the greatest pieces of cinema ever, is to have light and dark. That's it. It's plain and cut and dry there. And these new installations into franchises that either already exist or just stories that come out show the blurriness. And it's different from something like Megamind. Megamind is he's bad. It's funny that he's bad. He's an anti-hero for comedy's sake. They're still good and bad. It's played for laughs. It's taking something and saying there is no good, there is no evil. Just do what feels right. And I don't think Wicked falls into this, but I wanted to still talk about it. And I don't know where it goes in part two in that sense. I know the twist of part two, but I don't know, like, how does the Elphaba we see in part one turn into, you know, as you said, there's behind the scenes more or less of Wizard of Oz, where you see what happens when you're not focused on the characters. And so that's supposed to justify everything she does, which the things I can think of is that she's trying to steal the shoes, which of course we saw the shoes in part one. She's throwing fireballs at them, and then she's threatening to not let her go home, I think is the premise of what you get from just the movie from way back when. But yeah, what do you guys think of that argument? Is that valid?
Well, I would say, I mean, she really just feels like a victim at the end of part one with where we're at now, which I feel like is what moral relativism is. You know, instead of seeing them as a villain, you see them as a victim. You know, I think that's kind of where the Mufasa movie is going to go with Scar, but especially, so I feel like it really depends on where things go with part two. If we still see her as the victim and kind of as oppressed or just acting out in what she does in Wizard of Oz, I think that's problematic. But if we see her kind of fall down that path of darkness and we still understand her motives, but we see what she's doing is wrong, I feel like that's more okay.
Also, here's another question that I just realized. The whole Wizard of Oz trope is that she wakes up and it was all a dream. Is that explored in part? I don't think that's too much of a spoiler, but is that explored in part two, or is that just kind of like, that didn't happen, it was real? Do you know?
That's an interesting point.
I don't think so, but yeah, again, I'm not sure. Yeah, I would jet into somewhat disagree. I don't think that Wicked is as much of a commentary on what makes a person good or evil. While it is that, it definitely is that, and it does talk about that. And those themes are especially explored more in Act Two, or what's traditionally Act Two, and I'm assuming that's where they'll go in Part Two. I think it's more, honestly, of a social commentary, and that's more of what the book was written to be on, of this idea. And I think they said it at one or two points in the movie in regard to the animals, that a good way to unite people is to give them an enemy, like a common enemy. And that's essentially what Madame Morrible and the wizard were doing with Elphaba, was making her the enemy. So basically setting her up as the person that everyone could hate together. And that's what made her wicked, was people's perception of her. Nothing that she did, nothing that, none of her actions were what made her wicked. And I think that was one of the moments that hit me the most in the movie, is when Madame Morrible is like giving that little announcement about, and she says, "This wicked witch." And that's the first time you hear Elphaba described as that. And it feels so heartbreaking, because you know that's not who she is. You know, we've watched her through the entirety of the movie, and we know that she's not evil. She's not wicked. She, tried to stop the monkey from hurting when it was, she was doing the spell to give him the wings, and it didn't work. So I think it's more of a commentary on how people in positions of power so often, honestly, like, control the narrative in a way that makes us hate certain people. And I also think it's interesting in terms of like PR, because that's been such an issue for this movie, between, Ariana Grande and Ethan Slater and Cynthia Erivo with the poster and some other things that have just happened, of the fact that there are people out there whose job it is to lie to us so we like terrible people is crazy. Like, I've been learning more, maybe this is going off too much of a rabbit hole, more about the PR firm that Johnny Depp hired during the Amber Heard situation, whose basically it was their job to make sure that the internet sided with Johnny Depp instead of Amber Heard. When if you look at the cold hard facts, they're both terrible people.
We've been fooled.
But for some reason, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, we love Johnny. Johnny's the best. Like, look at what this terrible woman did to him." Which, like, yes, there are some aspects to that. And yes, there was obviously stuff we don't know and we'll never know about that situation. But that PR firm also represented Joe Jonas when he went through his divorce with Sophie Turner. And there's a lot of stuff about that. There's been PR firms involved with the It Ends With Us drama that have been making people hate Blake Lively. And it's like, okay, I wish we could peek behind the curtain, wink, wink, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, and who is pulling these strings that make us see people in a certain light. I think Act 2 definitely goes more into the theme of what does make a person good or evil. Do your actions determine that? Do the outcome of your actions determine that? Do your intentions determine that? But I think Act 1 is definitely much more commentary on how people in power manipulate how we, as the common folk, view good and evil.
Yeah. I think that's something that my pastor, who is just as much of a movie nerd, if not more, than I am, he asked me what I thought about it, and I said I hadn't watched it yet. But he said that people had been talking about how the Wizard of Oz is representative of God and how he lies to us, and the secular world would say that and say that he's just a sham of something that's not that great. But I think it is more plausible to possibly put a real face behind the curtain, as in the things that are actually manipulating our perception of what is true and what is real, what is powerful. I think we saw a lot of that 4 years ago, personally. Not saying that with any authority, that's a personal statement, but we kind of just, especially in the age of social media, just believe what's put in front of us. Yeah. And I know I fall prey to that, of just saying, oh, this is a good idea, or this is an interesting thought, and it's like one person who now can say whatever they want to a million people, whether it's as innocent as that. Just one of my favorite Instagram comments is "we should all know less about each other" GIF, and it's just like those types of reels are the ones that are like, you really maybe shouldn't have made this, but sometimes it's more nefarious. You're right. I think that sometimes there's things that happen behind the scenes that we don't know about. I definitely don't think that God is the Wizard of Oz, pretending to be bigger than he is, or showing off, or anything like that. I mean, it's kind of shown in the movie, is like, he comes out pretty quickly and he's like, oh, people expect this. People need me to be this or something. And so it is really interesting. I think the misunderstood part is not misunderstood in the way that like I've brought up before, Megamind is misunderstood. He's like, I need to be evil or whatever, or I need to have an enemy. She's shown to be kind-hearted, and it's not out of malice that she's doing these things, and that's okay. It's a little odd, again, in my creative mind, as a, understanding the heart of the writer of The Wizard of Oz, to be like, okay, you're kind of twisting what they intended for the story to be, but in the end, you get a better story. And you can still enjoy The Wizard of Oz. It's not really changing anything, as far as I know.
Well, so that's an interesting little bit of lore, is that the musical Wicked is essentially based on a book that's based on the movie. So basically the book that's titled Wicked is a very intense R-rated, basically fan fiction on Glinda and Elphaba and their story. And it's literally basically like a fan fiction that got published, got pretty popular, and then someone said, hey, this would make a good musical. They toned it down, made it much more family friendly. So the Wicked movie is an adaptation of an adaptation of an adaptation of an adaptation, because The Wizard of Oz is also, as a movie, is also based on, it's either a book or a poem. I don't remember. But so essentially, yeah, the musical is based on a book that's based on the movie that's based on a book.
Crazy.
And so the guy who wrote Wicked was definitely much more of an activist trying to lay out that sort of social commentary than directly had to do with like the story of the Wizard of Oz as it was originally told.
Yeah. Breath of fresh air for me to have. This will be under an hour, because I had to edit a 3-hour-long episode last week, and so if we're done here, I'm okay with that. You guys have anything else?
Well, I just want to. I think from a filmmaking standpoint, like, props to the production designers, to the scenic designers, to the costume designers. Like, so much of this movie was practical, and it's gorgeous. Like the spinning bookcase deal in Dancing Through Life, that was all real somehow, I'm pretty sure, at least mostly real. The costumes, I was blown away with. I was super intrigued to see, as a costume designer myself, amateur though that may be. It was super interesting. I was super excited to see how they would adapt not only the iconic visuals we know from the film, but also the iconic looks that have been brought in by the musical. There's a lot of looks that are quintessential. Everyone, I feel like at least everyone in theater world knows the pink popular dress and the defying gravity dress and cloak.
The growing cape and the
Oh
divine
yeah,
gravity.
that was
Yes, well, and that was something that Seth said going out. He was like, "Yeah, and her cape grew really big," and I was like, "No, but that's a
Yeah.
nod. That's a nod to the design of this, the way it's done on the stage." So it's like, because she does put on a little cloak that masks the mechanism that lifts her up in the air on the stage. Then the mechanism on the stage also has a huge piece of fabric that unfurls. So it does give that illusion of like this cloak is just massive. So even in Seth saying that, I was like, well, I wouldn't be surprised if that's like a nod to the way it looks on stage at the end of the act in the Broadway version. But yeah, I thought everything looked so beautiful, was beautifully done, was beautifully interpreted. I'm really excited to see what they do in part 2. I hope we get a blue version of Glinda's dress. I think that would be awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do.
Speaking of hinting, or more or less Easter eggs from the theater show, Zach, did you pick up on what happened when they arrived in Oz? That song where they arrive in Oz. Did anyone clap in the theater at that moment? At a certain moment?
no, I don't think so. Was it somewhere over the rainbow or something? Or
No. Did you notice that they focused on 2 women a little bit longer than the rest of the extras?
I mean, I knew that was Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth. Yeah.
Okay, that's
And
what
they
I was wondering.
they let Idina Menzel do the riff too and everything. So.
Yeah. I didn't know how much you knew, how much
I knew
that
that,
was too
yeah,
obvious.
yeah.
Okay, sure.
Because Kristen Chenoweth being shot with Ariana Grande and then Idina Menzel being shot with.
That was pretty. It was pretty blunt, but I didn't know
It
what
was,
you knew
yeah.
or not. I like that Easter egg and cameos.
It was a cool Easter egg.
Yeah.
I heard their roles were originally described as like old wise women or something like that, and they were both like, "No, that's not how it's being described."
We're old. Yeah. So that was really good. I feel like I was talking during that point, and I was like, "Oh wait, something's happening." Zach, do you have anything else?
Well, I heard one of the main critiques that I saw for the film was the color grading. Did you hear about this at all?
In a good way or bad? As in, like very,
It was-
very bright?
Very muted, is what people thought.
I think it's a pretty bright movie.
Okay.
As in, or at least in the colors they pick.
Yeah. Let me see if I
There
can
was a
find-
couple of shots where I felt like the backlights were too bright. But it was honestly one of those things that I was like, I don't think I would have necessarily noticed if I hadn't been looking for it because other people said it. And I do think another piece is like people are comparing it maybe a little bit too much to the Technicolor of the original Wizard of Oz, which is like literally the whole point was to be as colorful and vibrant as possible. So I think that's a little bit unfair. When I think if they had gone that bright, people would have been a little turned off because they would have been like, "Oh my gosh, that's really, really saturated."
And I just read that the director went for went for a less saturated look to make it feel more like a real place. Is
Yeah.
what the director's defense was. So.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, even something like Oz was pretty bright green, but not as green as Elphaba.
The Emerald City, Oz is the whole.
Oh, I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Okay.
Silly me. Anyways, yes, the Emerald City is very green, but not as green as Elphaba. I think that's something similar to like the Hulk, where you can't just have him be a green screen. You have to have him be a little bit realistic. So I get that. I didn't really notice it. I didn't hear about it. So anyways, anything else from you, Zach?
Well, I feel like, going back to the question at the beginning of the movie, the question of wickedness, I feel like, we do have an answer of that as Christians is, the fact that we are born wicked and born sinful.
Yeah.
And that's something we struggle with. And, even after finding Christ and dedicating our lives to him, it's still something we struggle with. But, we're kind of growing as our lives go on and fighting that. And one day we will be completely non-wicked. So
Yeah, but the whole as something, or as Annika brought up earlier, the whole point of the title is, yes, to make a connection between Wizard of Oz because she's called the Wicked Witch of the West. That's her character's name in that movie. But it's ironic because she's not wicked in the show and the new movie. And so, at least as wicked as a supervillain is, if we were to argue theology, that she would be wicked, but she is a good person in the realm of the movie to care for animals, to have that be her driving force. Ellie and I were joking about Alphabet would think that whenever we'd see like a vegan commercial or something, or we heard about the one guy freaking out about the ethically sourced turkeys for Thanksgiving, and we were like, that'd be Alphabet if she was real. It's like, I think the guy said something like, these turkeys have not had the ability to live a long, happy turkey life. And he was completely serious. It was just really weird. But yeah, my point is that she's an animal activist, which is fine. She can use that as her driving force, and she's not wicked. And it makes for a good story. I think that's really what you're going to take away from this. You can talk all you want about moral relativism and wicked versus non-wicked, but it's really not that deep. And it's a good show and a good movie. And I think I'm interested to see how much money it makes. You have to look at it from a total perspective, because 2024 is not going to be its full run. If you look at highest grossing movies in 2024, it's not going to be there because it was released last week of November. But it will be interesting to see, because it won't. That's what. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to pass Inside Out 2 because it's not going to have enough time in 2024.
No.
But I will be interested. I think a lot of parents would bring their kids to see this. I think it's a pretty safe movie for PG, for live action, somewhat touchy subject. I think it's good, and but also to each his own. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time. Sounds like you guys did too.
Yeah.
I think we should end by holding some space.
I was
holding. Wait. How are you holding space?
Something has changed within me.
Yeah.
Something is not the same. I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game.
He's holding space.
I'm holding space, guys.
I forget the rest of the lyrics. Too late for second guessing. Too late to go back to sleep.
It's time to go to sleep.
It's time to trust my instincts. Close my eyes and leap.
I was going to leap backwards in my chair, but I remember Josh broke it.
Time to try defying gravity.
She's about to do the whole
I think
song right
I'll
now.
try defying gravity. Kiss me goodbye. I'm defying gravity. I get the rest of the verses mixed up. I haven't listened to it enough.
Then you gotta do like that finger hold thing too.
What's the finger hold
You guys
thing?
see that? They were just like holding each
Oh
other's.
yeah, they're like they hold each other's fingers really a lot. Which
It was really
okay,
weird.
in my defense, in the defense of theater kids around the world, okay, this is Annika. If you think that Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo were behaving abnormally, you would be correct. But if you think they're behaving abnormally for theater kids, you would be incorrect. If you think that their behavior was weird, you have clearly, and I'm not the first person to say this, don't anyone you accuse me of taking this from someone else, because yes, I am, okay? There is a unique, such a weird bond that happens when you're in theater with someone, and especially when you play a role across from each other. You are so close for 6 weeks, and then you never talk to them again. But when you talk about that experience, you get super, super emotional. So, in defense of Ariana and Cynthia, they're just theater kids. It's not that deep. Everything is that dramatic in the moment, but it's really not that dramatic in the long run. That's all I have to say about that.
Seth, I think you need to end this episode with a to be continued slide.
It was good, but your
No.
noise canceling it was better than I could do. I thought, Annika, you were gonna go off on hand holding. I know that people have been like, why are they holding hands? But then I was gonna bring up my one embarrassing theater story, where, and I think you had a role to play in this, Annika, is that I was paired with the homecoming queen for one of the dances.
Okay.
Damn.
And I believe at some point she approached Annika and said, "Your brother stinks at holding hands." It was probably the first hand I held, and it was something really bad. I remember. I just chose to keep rolling with it, and she noticed.
Yeah.
It was bad. Anyways, throwing that out there to keep myself humble.
Yeah. Hey, now you're married. You made it.
Yeah, I know. Share this podcast with your friends, follow and like, and buy some merch. And our 100th episode is coming up, which is going to be really cool. I think I have something cool planned. And to be continued. Until next time, know that you're loved. God bless.
Continued. Thanks for watching, Mom.
Annika, you got to put your head down and like.
There we go.
Goofy grin.